The first task of someone who practices philosophy is to abandon arrogance. It is impossible for anyone to learn that which he thinks he already knows. By the Greek philosopher Epictetus, which I think is such a cool name. But anyways, today I want to talk about ego and how I keep that part of myself in check on days like this. I wasn't able to upload a video last week because I was sick and in bed for a couple days, and I wasn't able to train. And I hit my last PR in my last video of 335. So of course, coming back from being sick and going to the gym again, all I want to do is kind of load it back up to that weight and just to see how much progress I lost, right? Feeding that ego part of myself. But I know that that's super pointless and I risk hurting myself. And if I hurt myself, I'm just going to be set back even further from this point that I'm already at. So these past couple training sessions of mine in the past couple days have been a real battle, both mentally and physically, to slow myself down and to believe in the process so that I can eventually get back to this point today where I can hit 315 again comfortably. So today I worked up to 315 for 3 singles, and then I backed down to 275 because I wanted to do some pause squats, but those were feeling super heavy after the singles. So I backed down again to 225 and just focused on keeping the reps clean, keeping the bar speed consistent, and just repping it out from there. But so back to the topic of ego and keeping that part of myself in check. I think a lot of beginners, when they come into the gym for the first time, they see these people on the internet moving crazy weight, and they begin to attach their perception of their success and perception of themselves, and maybe even their self-worth, to this arbitrary number that is just a hunk of rubber and metal hanging off of the rack. And for anyone who's trained for a couple years, you know that you're going to hit a point pretty quickly where you can't just keep adding weight onto the bar. If that wasn't the case, then you'd see a lot of people just squatting 800, 1,000 pounds all over the place, right? But there is a point where you can't just keep adding weight onto the bar, and you have to kind of go back to square one, kind of reassess your training and begin to train smarter. And this is the point where a lot of people feel discouraged and they feel like they're not making any progress. They call it their first plateau after the newbie gains. And some people just quit altogether because they think that there's no hope. When I come into a plateau like this, I start thinking about other factors I can improve or work on. Whether it's introducing new accessories into my training, trying out new exercises, finding new exercises to fall in love with and progress in over the weeks. For example, if I'm squatting a lot, I might switch over to front squats or hack squats and just try to progress in those for a couple weeks before revisiting my original squat and trying to progress again in that. Another thing I think about is training frequency of a specific lift or movement. If I can squat more times in this week than I could a couple weeks ago, I know that my body has adapted and I'm still making progress whether or not I'm moving more weight. And another 2 factors that I think about that are kind of closely related are bar speed and perceived exertion. Bar speed meaning how fast the weight moves. You can do this by recording yourself or asking a friend to see, okay, yeah, that weight was moving way faster this week than it was last week. Last week it was a grinder, this week it's flying. So you're making progress. Or perceived exertion. If you unrack this weight and it feels way lighter and you're like, I'm about to send this to the moon, you know that you're making progress, even though it might not be a heavier weight than you were squatting last time. Something else I keep in mind is the saying of perfect practice makes perfect, or you get better at exactly what you practice, which falls in line with one of the laws of training, which is specificity. And this is something I was introduced to in high school wrestling when my coach told me that we needed to squat past parallel all the way down, because if you don't practice squatting all the way down, you're not going to get good at squatting all the way down. If you only squat to parallel, that's what you're going to get good at, is squatting to parallel. And in a match, if someone squishes you into a range of motion that you're not used to, you're going to have a hell of a time if you've never had any experience with your knees fully flexed like that. So this is why I really love ass to grass squatting, because it keeps you accountable. Every rep looks exactly the same, and there's no room for ego and no room for error. If you've ever had to bail out of a heavy squat, it's super embarrassing. The whole gym's looking at you knowing that you're messing with weight that you have no business attempting. And I think that's way more embarrassing than squatting lighter weight with good technique. Personally, I think it's way more impressive to see somebody squatting 135 ass to grass with perfect form than it is to see somebody with 365 on the bar and squatting only down like halfway or like a quarter of a way before coming back up. The weight might be way higher, but if they're not squatting with perfect technique, or you can see that they're kind of compromising some part of their technique to get that weight up, I just hope that that person doesn't hurt themselves in the future. And I ask myself, like, is that person really getting quality training in, or are they just kind of like bouncing this weight up and down for a little bit, kind of just feeling good and leaving? Is there any actual adaptation happening there? So after a while of like working on my technique and trying to keep every rep the same, I can kind of start thinking about squatting a little bit differently. I start thinking about squatting like a craft. I know that this is something I want to do until I'm like well into my 80s. I want to do this forever if I can. So I know that I have plenty of time to progress, and I just want to focus on making something that looks good, something that feels good, and something I can kind of take ownership in. And this doesn't have to be squatting. I think you can apply this to benching, deadlifting, whatever movement you like, running maybe. But think about those videos on TikTok or YouTube of these craftsmen working on these beautiful clay pots or beautiful jewelry or wood pieces. They spend years and years of their life just perfecting the minute details of their craft, just to make sure that the end product is something that's beautiful and something that's worth their time to invest in, something they can be proud of. Your squat, your bench, your deadlift, you can think about that as a craft that you can spend years on perfecting, getting all the details, and you will be rewarded with weight and with gains and muscle size and all these good things, as long as you pay attention to the details and respect the weight and respect the movement. Something else is, I feel like in the strength training context and in the weight room, competition can be sometimes overvalued. In my last video, I said competition was very important to push yourself and to know what you're capable of. But at the end of the day, I've played a couple different sports in my life, and I've been in the weight room for all of them. So I save the competition for the sport, and in the weight room, I just focus on growing and focusing on quality and performing my reps and sets with quality and intention. The weight room is kind of a common denominator of all sports, and I think it's the perfect environment for you to grow yourself physically and mentally and help other people grow in the same way along the way. Think of strength and think of your technique as a house that you're trying to build, and every rep that you perform is a brick that you're laying down. Quality reps equals quality bricks. Bad reps, bad form equals, maybe a brick is like askewed here or there, and enough of those will eventually lead to a pretty crappy house that's gonna crumble after a couple years, right? So spend time focusing on those details and really dialing into your technique and respecting the weight, respecting the movement, to make sure that the end product that you have is something that will last for a long time and is something that you can be proud of. And back to that quote in the beginning of abandoning arrogance, and if you think that you already know something, it's impossible for you to learn more from it. Just because you hit a weight before doesn't mean you can't hit it again and still get gains from it. Just because I've squatted 335 before doesn't mean that 135 is worthless to me, or even squatting the empty barbell is worthless to me. I always think about how many times a professional, like Olympic level lifter has squatted an empty barbell, probably thousands more times than I have. We all see these big lifts on Instagram, but you never see the hundreds and thousands of reps that they do behind the scenes that got them to that point. So maybe repping out the empty barbell for a couple more sets is gonna eventually get you to that point where you can squat heavier weight. And any movement is progress. I wholly believe in that. The Bioneer, which is an amazing workout channel and training philosophy channel, just put out a training philosophy video about how if you're moving, you're improving. And you don't have to subscribe to any kind of training modality or any kind of program. And you don't even have to get strong in the gym. You can get strong in nature, get strong at home. He says something along the lines of, you don't even need to track your progress, because as long as you stay consistent and have fun with it, good things will happen. I think weight training is a perfect environment for growth, and in life, there's going to be a lot of things that are not necessarily fair. If you put a lot of time into them, it's not necessarily true that you're going to get benefits from them. Whether it's a school, a job, or a relationship, you might be putting in a lot of effort, but the outcome might not be what you want. But in the weight room, as long as you keep showing up and putting in the effort and respecting it, good things will happen to you. Mother Nature will force your body to adapt and you will get stronger. So just because you think you know it doesn't mean you can't continue to grow from it and learn from it. So don't be afraid to lighten the weight a little bit, work a little bit more on technique, focus on thinking about your exercise and your movement as a craft. Take ownership of your movement and be proud of it, and keep that ego in check. I think that's all I have for today. I'll put my Instagram down in the link below if you're interested in looking a little bit more at my training on a day-to-day basis. But for now, I'll see you guys next time I upload. Thank you again. Have a great day, guys.